Okay, let's talk more about the state of the U.S. economy. And for that, we're going to bring in Sean Stein Smith. Sean is an associate professor at Lehman College, City University of New York. Always good to have you on my program, my friend. Thank you so much for being here.
Always good to be here, Sean. Thank you.
Let's talk about this latest economic data that came out. I want to get your main takeaway from the GDP report. Which sector's really kind of jumping out at you right now?
Yeah, absolutely. And so, as had been forecasted, the individual consumer has still been quite strong, empowering the growth of almost 3% at an annualized rate. So it's really the individual consumer out there, as well as corporate profits, holding up.
Okay, what kind of surprises in terms of consumer spending, government spending, which is also up, or business investment are you taking note of right now?
So I would say the biggest individual surprise to me has been that even as the Fed has held the rates higher for longer, that has not yet dampened the individual consumer's ability to go out there and to purchase. And I'm also interested in the fact that even as the political uncertainty over the last few months has sort of unwound itself, that corporate investment and also government spending have also kept up at those higher levels.
You know, I'm glad you talked about the Fed, because one of the time-honored traditions here in the United States is second-guessing what they're doing. So let's talk about inflation, interest rates, and how they factored into today's GDP data, and how that may affect the next Fed decision on interest rates.
Yes, absolutely. And so obviously the Fed has been holding rates higher for longer as compared to the past 20-odd years. But there has been a sort of pivot in the conversations and the minutes at the Fed in terms of how they are going to normalize interest rates going forward. So I would not be surprised if in the first quarter of next year the Fed pauses their interest rate cuts to watch and see how inflation, which has ticked up moderately over the last few months, evolves in the post holiday season.
Okay. I got the wild card in my hand right now, and you know what I'm talking about. We can't talk about the economy without discussing Donald Trump, who is going to be taking office. What are your thoughts on Trump's tariff plans and the broader economic impact? If you listen to anybody with economic experience, we are all going to pay for these tariffs. It's not going to be Canada, China, Mexico, or whichever country he chooses to name.
Yeah, so obviously tariffs increase the end cost of goods borne by us, the individual consumers. But the announced policies around tariffs are just that, policies that have been put out there by Trump and his team. So as is almost often the case with the president-elect, he and his team do tend to put policies out there in the ether for conversation that are beyond what most experts think is actually reasonable. And then over time, with conversations between heads of state, counterparties, and all the rest, these more extreme ideas are gradually walked back more towards the middle, but ultimately push the conversation in the direction he and his team had originally wanted.
You know, 99% of the time I would agree exactly with what you're saying, but the president-elect has made it clear he wants to surround himself with people who are loyal to him, loyal to his ideas, loyal to his policies. And we know now Trump's pick for U.S. Trade Representative. I want to get your take on Jamieson Greer and his track record and his stance on trade with countries such as China.
So obviously his picks are just that, right? Picks, right? These picks have to be confirmed, have to go through background checks, vetting processes, and all the rest. And it's also important to keep in mind that in the first Trump White House, his first round of picks did not always last his entire first term.
Sure.
But echoing back to the point on tariffs, right? His point on these tariff announcements has been to try to make Mexico and Canada help the U.S. crack down on issues at the border, be it drugs, border crossings, and the announced tariffs on China are, I think, more of a posturing measure and sort of a announcement of how he's going to run things going forward, as opposed to firm economic policy.
Okay, we're going to have to wait and see on that one. You know, I also think it's very interesting. If you gauge the feeling of people in the United States, clearly this recent election showed that a majority of people here in this country believe the U.S. is mired in economic dire straits. I'm curious about what you think about this most recent financial information over the past several months. It seems to show something markedly different, or does it?
Well, you know, it's always pertinent to keep in mind that all of us in the markets, economics people, do analyze data as it comes in, right? And wages are going up, investment has gone up, consumers are out there buying goods and services. But on the individual side, right, the person on the street feels things like inflation on a, cumulative basis, and prices have gone up.
On a daily basis, they're feeling this.
Yeah, on an almost daily basis. And ultimately, prices have gone up 20%, 30% for goods and services, be it entertainment, meals, autos, all the rest. And so that is the backdrop for why, even though on the surface the economic numbers are solid, people aren't really as optimistic as you might think.